This is a short video discussing the calculations required for Section 2 of Project 1 rental car. Up to this point, we have collected all of the user input, the rental code, the days rented, the odometer start, the odometer end, the weeks rented, and we've done a base charge calculation. Those calculations aren't complete. We now have to go through, and based on the total number of miles, we have to add some charges because we don't have cars that are unlimited miles. So we have to pay for the miles that we've driven. And these mile charges will be in addition to the base charge. So let's take a moment to read over the comments. Section 2 is calculate the cost from the customer input. We're going to calculate the mileage. We're going to calculate the total mileage. We're going to say the end odometer reading minus the start odometer reading, and we're going to store this in the variable total miles. So here's where we're going to do that calculation. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to calculate the mileage charge. So if it's a budget rental, it's straight 25 cents a mile. If it's a daily rental, it's a little more complex. If the average number of miles driven per day is 100 miles or less, then calculate the average daily miles as the total miles divided by the days rented. Then if the average daily miles is above if the average daily miles is above 100 miles per day, then we're going to calculate the extra miles as average daily miles minus 100, then it's 25 cents a mile. So for a daily charge, you get 100 miles before you start paying the 25 cents a mile. Weekly is a little different. So the weekly miles, there's no charge if the miles driven per week is 900 miles or less. So we get the total miles minus by the weeks divided by the weeks rented. If the mileage is mileage charge is $100 per week if the number of miles driven per week exceeds 900. So we have several different calculations to do, and they're based on the type of rental. So we know what the user input for their type of rental was because we have rental code. We got all the way back up here at the top on line 13. We asked them to tell us what the rental code was. Since this is in the global scope, we can go all the way down here and use that in these calculations. But first, they want to find out the miles driven. And we know the miles driven. We got the odometer start reading here in line 60 and the odometer end reading in line 66. So the total miles is going to be the odometer end, odometer end minus odometer start. So that will give us the total miles. So now, based on that total miles, we have to calculate the mileage charge. So if it's budget, it's 25 cents per mile driven. So I'm going to say total charge right now is going to be 0 because it's just a helper variable. And now I'm going to say if rental code double equals budget B, then total charge is going to be total base charge plus total miles total miles times 25 cents. So we have our base charge. We calculated our base charge up here. So for budget, the base charge was days rented times the budget charge. And down here, what we're going to do is we're going to say total charge is base charge plus the total miles times 0.25, because it's 25 cents a mile on top of the base charge. So here, we're just going to do a little quick test. We're going to print total charge. Total charge. So I'm going to go and I'm going to run this. I'm going to run it only for budget because that's all we have the calculation for. B is for budget. Number of days rented is 3. Starting odometer reading is going to be 100. Ending odometer reading is going to be 600. So I drove 500 miles. So $120 plus 500 times 0.25 is 245. So now let's go on to the next calculation. The next calculation is for daily. So it'll be LF, rental code is daily. Well, what do we have to do for daily? What does it tell us down here? No charge if the average number of miles per day is 100 miles or less. So if total miles is less than or equal to 100, well, we don't really need to do it like that, do we? We only need to calculate it if, well, that's not true. My bad. We're going to say total charge is equal to base charge. Otherwise, we're going to say that we have to do something. Well, what do we have to do? Oh, my bad. It's the number of miles driven per day. So if the rental code is D, I had that wrong. I apologize. If the rental code is D, we need to have average daily miles, average day miles needs to equal the total miles divided by days rented. So then it's if average day miles is above 100. If average day miles is less than or equal to 100, then the total charge is just the base charge because you're not charged for anything to do with miles. However, if it's not, if it's above 100 miles per day, then the extra miles are going to be charged at 25 cents a mile. So else we're going to have extra miles are going to equal total miles minus 100. And then our calculation is going to be total charge equal base charge plus extra miles times 25 cents. And so that would give us our daily charge. So if we go and we run this and we check for daily, so I will have rented it 5 days. The start odometer reading is going to be 100. The end odometer reading, we're going to make it 2,000. So we have $100. Sorry, $300 is the base charge. And then 25 cents times the extra miles means we would pay $750. Now finally, we have the weekly mileage. There's no charge if the average number of miles driven per week is 900 miles or less. Otherwise, we have to have the average weekly miles calculated, and the mileage charge is $100 per week if the average number of miles driven exceeds 900 miles. So, this is going to be our final statement. This is LF. Rental code is weekly. Then we now have to calculate the average weekly miles. Average week miles. So we're going to say average week miles is total miles divided by weeks rented, because this is a weekly charge. So if average week miles is, what is it? It tells us down here, if the number of miles driven per week is 900 or less, is less than or equal to 900, then total charge is base charge. Okay? Else, now we have to do some calculating. So the calculating is $100 per week if the average number of miles driven per week exceeds 900 miles. So total charge is going to equal base charge plus weeks rented times 100. So if we test this for weeks, and we say weeks, it's 2 weeks. The starting odometer reading, is 100. The ending odometer reading is 3,000. $580 looks to be right. So that is section 2 of the rental car project.